The activation of the armed forces of Ukraine in Donbass and the appearance in the region of the militants, and NATO mercenaries forced Russia to take extremely harsh measures and transfer its heavy flamethrower systems to the border with Ukraine. The capabilities of the latter are such that the strike of such a system will be sufficient not only to completely destroy the superior forces of the enemy, but also to burn out the terrain within a radius of more than 1 kilometer. American mercenaries, U.S. Special Forces, and soldiers from other NATO countries are in Ukraine to help train soldiers and snipers. Currently, with the help of the U.S. and NATO military, Ukraine has trained thousands of elite snipers. Currently, Ukrainian snipers have begun to disperse throughout the Eastern Front, and snipers are deployed near important strongholds. In addition, Ukraine has also begun digging large numbers of trenches and building bunkers on the front line in eastern Ukraine in preparation for a possible short-term confrontation. It can be said that Ukraine's preparations never stopped, as did the US and NATO assistance, but Russia's strong countermeasures aroused fear in the US and the West, which helped ease tensions. Russia has deployed its deadliest weapon, the latest 220mm TOS-1 thermobaric rocket launcher, in forwarding positions near Ukraine. The US media pointed out that thermobaric bombs developed in Russia have always been famous for their cruelty and had great lethal power. The principle of a thermobaric bomb is to use air explosives to create a thermobaric effect, which is why it is called a thermobaric bomb. Reports the publication Soho. Apparently, the transfer of Russian heavy flamethrower systems was carried out by one of the trains, which were previously seen moving towards the Ukrainian border to be deployed on the territory of one of the field camps. Russia warned Kiev and NATO that in the event of a threat to Russian citizens in Donbass, measures will follow immediately, and they will be extremely harsh. After NATO threats, Russia sent a group of warships to the Kaliningrad region. Frank threats from NATO about its readiness to unleash a war with Russia and the alliance's refusal to comply with Russian requirements for providing security guarantees forced Russia to react harshly to this, as a result of which a group of warships moved towards the Baltic Sea and the Kaliningrad region. According to the current assumptions of experts, the appearance in the region of 3 large landing ships of the Russian Navy at once is the first step in the adoption of military measures against the West, about which earlier claimed Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation Alexander Grushko. According to the Operative Line Telegram channel, a group of 3 large landing ships is transporting some heavy cargo, which may be weapons in response to the disrupted NATO talks in Brussels. Residents living on the shores of the Baltic Straits note that yesterday they saw a detachment of large amphibious ships of the Northern Fleet, fully loaded with something, as part of the large landing craft Pyotr Morganov, Olenigorsky Minor and George the Victorious, following from the North Sea to the direction to the Kaliningrad region. It is possible that the transition of 3 large landing ships of the Northern Fleet to the Baltic Sea is directly related to the military technical measures that the Russian Ministry of Defense is already taking in response to NATO actions, said in the published message. At the moment, there is no data on preparations for the exercise. In this regard, experts believe that we can really talk about the transfer of weapons to the Kaliningrad region. Moreover, we can talk about the same tanks, operational tactical missile systems, air defense systems, electronic warfare systems, etc. Meanwhile, the main direction of NATO and armed forces attacks on Donbass has been revealed. Based on the flights of American military reconnaissance aircraft and the Strike Control Board, experts determined the main direction of the attack of the armed forces of Ukraine, and more than likely, that of NATO forces, in the Donbass. According to experts, judging by the flight routes of American military aircraft, we are not talking about intentions to attack Russian forces. However, the central part of the DPR and LPR will become the main attack front, and it is more than likely that this will happen within the next few months, if not weeks. Based on the flight routes of NATO military aircraft, experts came to the conclusion that the central part of the DPR and LPR is being monitored, in connection with which the armed forces of Ukraine, more than likely, will try to cut off the southern and northern parts of the self-proclaimed republics, which will allow them to break up the militia forces. Regular flights of American strike control aircraft may well indicate the fact that the armed forces of Ukraine are receiving information about targets for a subsequent massive strike, which will allow them to launch a quick offensive. The current situation indicates that the armed forces of Ukraine are really preparing to attack the Donbass, and apparently, Russia also has similar data, which continues to pull up various kinds of military equipment to the border with Ukraine, fearing a possible attack, as well as in case of providing assistance to the self-proclaimed republics and citizens of the Russian Federation living there.